G'day, Newcastle. Welcome back to your Jetstream, and she's all better this week. Recovery from a loss the previous week against Auckland, come out on top with the goods against Sydney FC. We'll get into all that, and a bit of a condensed episode this week, mainly due to the fact that next week is an international break. So, and there's no point previewing a game that's 2 weeks away. So, we'll talk about the Sydney game, a little bit of information, and then we'll get you on your way. Try and make this less than the usual hour and a half that happens whenever this bloke joins me on the call. Matt, welcome back, mate.
Good evening, mate. I'm glad that you put all the blame on me, like subconsciously. Like it's funny that we can talk shit about the Jets for an hour or two without even thinking about it.
Well, absolutely. And I do have to say that the episode with Andy last week was an hour and a half as well. So that's complete and utter rubbish. So, yeah, it doesn't really seem to... Maybe I'm the common denominator. You and Andy, I think, managed to knock over an episode, even with missing a week, I think. Or, no, you kept the streak going, that's right. So, but you still, I think, managed to get it done in an hour. So, yeah, maybe I'm the problem.
It's those long questions, Furns. Like,
it's a long lead-in.
Yeah. I do my best to answer your question, but by the end of it, I've generally forgotten what the start was.
Yeah, it's a long meandering road. That sounds like a great episode title, just to get the episode kicked off. But anyway, we'll see if anything else comes up in the meantime. What's that?
It'll be 1 of 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, this Sunday saw us travelling down to Allianz Stadium, to the refurbished or rebuilt new stadium that we hadn't won in, and we're history-making Jets did a little bit more history and won for the first time in the new Allianz Stadium. And I think from memory, I watched this game earlier, a couple of hours before we started recording. I think they said the last time we'd won away to Sydney was back in COVID season. I think was the last time we'd actually won down in Sydney.
Surprised me. It's been like a bit of a dry spell, like putting it, bluntly.
Yeah, absolutely. And when all the news came out, ironically, the day after or the morning of the podcast episode dropping, all of the news. Well, we already knew that one of the players was going to be out, but there was 2 others that were also unavailable. We knew that Taylor was going to be out, and we included that in our discussion on the starting 11 possibilities, but not realising that we would be also missing Eli Adams and Daniel Wilmering. What were your thoughts when that news dropped that we were not missing just 1 but 3 key players?
If I can sum it up in 2 words, oh shit.
Yep.
Like, Adams has been one of our most consistent goal outlets, and Wilmering has been one of our most consistent players, and avenues to goal. So it didn't look promising. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, especially and obviously also coupled with the history A against Sydney FC and B against Sydney FC away from home. It didn't look very good, did it?
Not at all. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're sort of sitting on the table, or like it certainly helps to be in the top half, but to be playing Sydney at home and wearing a Jets jersey, it doesn't sort of bode well for the potential result. So no, we've not only, I guess, outdone expectations and broken my curse, because I backed them last week in the tips comp.
You backed the Jets?
Because I backed the Jets last week because they lost the week before, and I'm like, well, stuff it, that's twice in a row. So
may as well.
The hoodoo's gone. I'm back, mate. I'm allowed to.
He's back,
it's
baby.
Not me. It's not me. It must be Ben that is the only one that can't back the Jets, and they win. So, yep. Come on, you Jets.
Well, look, you and I talked about it 2 weeks ago, and I revisited the topic with Andy last week, talking about the stability in the starting 11 and the fact that he hadn't changed anything for weeks on end, which we were wondering whether it was going to be getting to the point where we would be reactive in making changes rather than being proactive. You and I think, talked about plateaus and recognising whether we were starting to go downhill and then reacting then, or whether we would gotten to a point where, well, maybe we're on a plateau, maybe to get to the next uptick we needed to switch things around for freshness. Well, that sort of whole discussion was rendered moot with the injuries, and I mean, the Auckland game, I think I remember all three of those players getting absolutely smashed by Auckland players at one point, and we're lucky that there wasn't half the team out with how physical Auckland was against us to try and put us off our game. But I suppose it's a long way of saying, look, we were forced into making changes to the starting 11 due to injury. So how happy were you with what Millsy ended up going with to start the game? When we were having the discussion, Andy and I last week, I was pretty much in the opinion that I thought Bertoncello would be a lock to start, and he stayed on the bench, and it was three of the players we hadn't seen in weeks and weeks that ended up taking the vacant spots in Aquilina, Grozos, and who was the third one? Kota, that's right. Kota being on the wing. So how look, what was your thoughts on the starting lineup?
Probably the only surprise for me was Grozos. Like, I have been a massive advocate for getting Ben Gibson in with Lockie Rose into the starting lineup for how many weeks now?
We'll get to it. We did see it for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so, but we did see it. But
geez, they look good.
Oh, they did.
So to see Kota come in, maybe rather than Gibson, and to see Aquilina come in with an injured Wilmering, they were the sort of probably the safe picks, but see Bayliss sort of move forward and bringing Grozos instead of sort of starting Gibson when we have been so starved for goals over the last couple of weeks. Like, that was probably the only one that I was like, it didn't necessarily 100% agree with.
Yep.
But we were playing Sydney at home. We're not the home team. We're not supposed to be on the front foot. He didn't play a bad game by any stretch, and it was like really, really good to see those three players that have had minimal minutes over the last sort of 6 months come in and run the game out essentially. Like, Kota was brilliant in the first half.
Yeah.
Aquilina was just solid for the full 90 minutes, and Grozos can't really think of a mistake that he made. So I can't tell you exactly when he came off because I haven't sort of watched the full game sort of since it was live. But
I've got the stats. We'll get to that.
Yeah, he was good. And because Bayliss has sort of been so comfortable, I guess, in that sort of final third over the last sort of 6 weeks, then I guess from a managerial sort of standpoint, it kind of made sense. But it was another take on it. It was slightly less attacking, I guess, than what I would have preferred. We weren't exactly box office, but we were very much, once again, brick wall.
Yeah, well, that sort of leads into my next question. I wish I had have taken more notice of the first half when I sort of realised during the second half that they'd sort of switched the midfield around a little bit, and I'm sort of interested to. I should if I'd have had the time, I would have gone back and sort of tried to watch it again to see see if I was actually seeing what I thought I saw, or whether I was pulling tactics out of my ass. But it really looked like initially, and the reason why Sydney FC started the game a lot better than we did was I think we were sort of in two minds as to what to do with the Burgess-Grozos situation. And I think we ended up playing both of them as sort of deep-lying midfielders rather than just continuing with Burgess as the anchor and having Grozos and Bayliss a bit further forward. So it was sort of a 4-2-1-3 with a front with Rose, Dobson and Kota sort of like the furthest forward. And then we sort of seemed to switch it around a bit and we decided that, no, we need to continue with what's been working. And we kept Burgess as the anchor, and then Grozos and Bayliss were pushing further forward, which sort of gave us a bit more joy in those sort of forward runs and linking the midfield and the attack up a lot better. Did you see that at all, or am I just imagining things?
No, I did. Especially with, I guess, the chance that Bayliss had sort of early in the second half. He was certainly pushing forward, but I think it sort of also came down to the shift that Sydney made, because they very much started out with a 5 at the back.
Yep.
And then obviously went to 4 at the back with when Quintal came on in the second half, and they were sort of chasing the game a little bit. So,
but they still had the better of the game, probably up until about 5 to 10 minutes before we scored.
Yeah, I think that probably the last 15 though of the second half, we certainly regained a fair bit of the possession statistics, and potentially even sort of the chances.
Oh, we definitely did. The possession ended up being almost equal by the end of the game, and we were way ahead on XG.
And like there were some really clear cut chances for Sydney.
Yeah.
But I think that as far as who had the ball in the most opportune positions, like we were for the last 15-20 minutes of that first half, when we'd sort of worked out the 5 at the back, and that they'd sorted out that little midfield duel that we sort of had going on positionally, as far as who should have been getting the ball whether it was Burgess or Grozos.
Yep.
And Bayliss had sort of maybe even pushed that little bit further forward to play like a number 10. Like we certainly started to open them up as far as like the counter-attacking opportunities. So listening to Milligan's press conference after the game, it was sort of something that he sort of spoke about as well. It was like formations that they hadn't sort of seen from Sydney over the last couple of months. So it's good that players are working it out as they go along on the during the course of a half. And it's also good that it's not costing us goals like during that time period where they are having to try and work it out.
Yeah, because it used to be our Achilles heel.
Absolutely. Like it used to be us going to Sydney and just capitulating after they'd get 1 or 2 good opportunities and then put one in the back of the net, and then all of a sudden we'd fall to pieces because we just didn't know how to deal with it. And it's a completely different result. Like last weekend, not only did we deal with it, but we saw the coach moved along as well.
Yeah, that news has just broke an hour or so before we started recording that Tale's been relieved of his position. Pretty sure that paves the way for him to move 30 kilometres out west and take up the post out there, but we'll talk about that if we really care at some later point. So going back to sort of the way the game ebbed and flowed, it sort of looked like, you're right. Yeah, so Sydney FC did have was sort of running with a back 5 and did have a lot of the momentum up until about the 20, sort of between 20 and 25 minutes, sort of as my vague recollection of the game sort of unfolded. And then that's when we made the tweak and sort of had Burgess just being the anchor on his own, rather than, and just Bayliss and Grozos would drop back and help him out when needed, but they weren't sort of physically located in that deep position as much as they were early on in the first half. Then obviously, like you said, the halftime change happens for Sydney. And then they brought on the young kid, and haven't they got some? They've brought in some really good players in the January window, which has helped them. I'm pretty sure Quintal did he come in the January window, or was it?
I think so.
Stammer.
I think. Yeah, Stammer definitely did.
Yeah. Well, they were getting a lot of joy from their number 9. He sort of was being marshalled quite well by our defence, but he was getting a fair bit of the ball, which was possibly concerning. But like I said, that was until we sort of made the switch, scored the goal, and then seemed to dominate the proceedings a lot more until halftime. Repeating myself again, then Sydney FC changed things around when they brought Quintal on, and it was a titanic arm wrestle for the second half, which we were fortunately able to come out on the better end of. But I don't know whether their goal was sort of. We'll talk about the specifics of the goals in a minute when we talk about the highlights, but the game sort of ebbed and flowed, which was really good for the neutral. But, must have been a little nerve-wracking for the 100 or so Jets fans that did make the trip down the F3, but it was all in all a really exciting game.
Yeah, I think that kind of end-to-end game probably suits us more. Like, I mean, if if there, and as much as we probably haven't shown it over the last 4 weeks, if there is a team that's going to score in a very open game, it's still probably us, like with quick ball movement and technical players and the rest of it. So the more spread that we can get the game, the more likely we are to score. And I think the real focus, I guess, from the coaching perspective, since the new year has been not letting the game spread as much. While we're in the ascendancy, and I think last weekend was probably really case in point as far as how we were able to finish it and how we were able to go back to the roots and still sort of find opportunities, still pressure the opposition when they're trying to come out of their half. You sort of touched on it, but yeah, the goal was probably going back to 3-4 months ago, like a turnover near sort of near halfway, and we might have spread too fast, or unfortunate sort of combination of events. But yeah, it's good to still see that the as much as coaching has made them more disciplined, that they still haven't lost their natural game. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Righto. So the lineup, just to clarify, was Delhi in goals, Bertolicio, Shaughnessy, Natter, Aquilina, Burgess, Grozos, Dobson, Bayliss, Mizanuma, and Rose. On the bench, we had Cicluna, Bertoncello, Gibson, Nunez, Nassiap, Cooper, and a very young DeBono, I think was one of the... It didn't come on, but I think he was another one of our crop of talented youngsters from the academy that was able to be brought into the squad and get a little bit of game day experience. Didn't get on the pitch, but experience the atmosphere and the lead up and everything else. But that's going to do him, another one of those younger players that's going to be one to watch for the future, which is great. We'll start and have a look, go through the highlights as we both sync up our highlights on the Paramount Plus apps. First one looks like, a chance for us. Dobson getting the ball just outside the 18-yard box. Devonish Mears palms it away, and a snapshot from Kota on the right-hand side of their goal cannons off the bar, and it was a prequel to what was going to come in about 8 minutes ahead.
And to be honest, I thought that would have been his best opportunity to score in 6 months. And unfortunately, maybe a little bit of rustiness or a little bit of over enthusiasm, and he's absolutely blasted it. And commentary sort of, mentioned like the keeper wasn't going to get anywhere near that, even if it was another foot or even 2 feet, sort of, inside the post. But ricochet back off the post. And they were the kind of moments that we were creating quite often. 6 weeks ago when we had the 2 sort of 4-1 victories in a row. Unfortunate for Kota that one didn't go in.
Yeah, absolutely. And he sort of learned his lesson. Didn't take him very long. But like I said, it was a prequel to. And look, we'd sort of and that I think was sort of the first sort of not necessarily the first sniff at goal. We'd had a couple of forays into their box before that, but it looked like we were starting to get a little bit more of the initiative and a momentum back from us, rather being mostly Sydney getting that seemed to have most of the initiative up until then.
Yeah, there was certainly a bit more ascendancy, and it didn't come from a lucky sort of ricochet. It was like from a couple of minutes of more sustained pressure and more constant possession that sort of led up to that. As much as it was a sort of one-on-one challenge that won us the ball, I think that because we pressured them and made it difficult for them to get out of their half. That we were able to, put the press on a little bit higher, and that sort of resulted in the turnover.
The next phase on the highlights is a bit of a chest shot from Campbelltown. That's apparently the way to pronounce his name, even though it's spelled Campazzuno. But a ball in from Marsland, which he only has managed to get his chest to it. That seemed to be most of what Sydney was able to rustle up as far as their goal chances go. They were threatening without sort of being massively threatened. Most of the efforts that they had, apart from obviously the goal that we
Sides?
conceded. Yeah.
Or being offside.
Well, yes, that too. A lot of that. A lot of that in a second. We'll see what crops up in the highlights package as we go through it for the second half. But yeah, it sort of seemed our chances seem to be more threatening than theirs. Is sort of what I'm in a roundabout way of what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, it only takes a VAR failure to overturn, I guess, sort of one or two of the goals that they actually had, like the penalty call and the offside trap and blah blah blah. But yeah,
I hope those are in there.
It was certainly, like I said, much more back to our roots and how we were sort of playing, at least from an attacking style earlier. And hats off to like the two at the back, Natter and Shaughnessy. Like, I thought they both had excellent games as far as marshalling that back line and making sure it stayed straight. And all in all, like, I mean, and even the goal that Sydney scored, you can't really put that on the two centre backs. That sort of came from a turnover and maybe not closing down quickly enough. But yeah, all in all, defensively, like, we looked really, really good against one of the best teams in the comp. Playing away from home.
Yep, absolutely. It's probably annoying for Cooper that he's been out. He's sort of unlucky to get. I think was it a red card? The reason why he's out and he hasn't been able to get his. But obviously for the for stability, he's kept Shaughnessy in there. But Cooper had been really good as a young player before then, partnering Natter. But it seems to have been even more assured now that Shaughnessy's hit his straps. It didn't take him I don't think it took. I think we had this discussion a couple of pods ago, but I think it only took him maybe 2 games to get himself acclimatized, and then he's just been awesome since then.
And that's the great thing about the squad at the moment, is that either of those two could go out, Natter or Shaughnessy, and you wouldn't feel like we're losing that much having sort of Cooper come back in. You'd lose maybe a bit of chemistry and a bit of communication, but from a individual perspective, he's probably as good as either of those other players. So I was certainly more concerned having Taylor and Adams out of the starting lineup, given our sort of goal scoring, not woes, but our troubles, I guess, that we've had over the last couple of weeks, rather than, like losing a centre back at the moment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moving on from the Sydney FC chance, and this is where we get to the goal. I'll not preempt any of the action. I'll let you talk it over so that I don't say everything.
Mate, didn't it almost come from nothing? Like a headed ball from a clearance. Like, what was that? A ball from Bayliss back to Max Burgess, who's sort of looped the ball out to Kota, who was half on the break. And unfortunately for Kota, he's not going to have the speed that he probably did 10 years ago, but he's still got all the technique in the world. And to watch that ball bounce and then bounce again and then just absolutely thunder it into the far side, it was an absolute cracker. Like, when he missed, like I said, when he missed the first one, I'm like, oh, it's probably his best chance to sort of get on the score sheet in what was 11 months apparently in the A-League. he's scored a couple of crucial goals for us in the Australia Cup. And before that injury, he was looking really like a key player. But I think talking to staff and talking to other players, like he is such an influential person, like around the locker room and around the squad during training, etc., etc. And he's probably part and parcel as much as what Mark Milligan has done from a coaching perspective. He's a lot of the growth and the temperament that we're seeing from these young guys is probably got to go back to Kota as far as his professionalism.
Yeah, I think I remember them saying in the call the last time he scored in the league was the last away game to Sydney.
In the same stadium, I think.
Yeah. We didn't end up winning that game, obviously, because, we don't generally do that.
It would have been his one loss that we'd had, with him in the squad last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So looking at the second half was a really good opportunity. Looked like it ended up going to Natta, I think. This was in the 61st minute where a ball, a nice little looping cross into the. Just going back to that Kota goal too. Could we classify that as a Thunder Bastard? Does it meet the criteria
for
a Japanese thing?
I don't think it can quite be a Thunder Bastard.
The first effort would have been a Thunder Bastard with the way he hit it, but it obviously didn't go in.
Yeah, the first one was definitely a Thunder Bastard contender. The second one was all Tekkers, I think. Like, to be able to let the ball like bounce and run across you, and be getting closed down and sort of still hit it on the volley, like on the half volley, and that was beautiful. Like, I don't think there's anyone else in the squad that would have scored that goal. Let's put it that way.
Righto. So Kota all Tekkers is another genuine possibility for an episode title. Right. So getting to
I think it was Bertoncello that might have hit the stanchion after.
Let's have a look at it, because it looked like so it was a free kick into the box from Dobson. So if we look at the reverse angle, I think it actually hit both of them.
If we just put a bit of a caveat on that, they never would have had the opportunity if Adams was on the pitch.
Absolutely. And it was interesting to see who was taking the because it usually is Eli and Dobson taking up position to take the kick, and then usually it's Eli. Now with Eli not there, Dobson's like, I'm taking advantage of this. So and look, it was a really good ball in. It's three players right onto the into the vicinity of three players that were attacking it. Like I said, it's obviously it's a bit difficult to tell, but it looks like either Natta or Bertoncello and Natta. I think Natta got the last touch on it.
Oh, did you? I'm looking at it again. I thought it was straight off Bertoncello's head.
Right. Well, you could be right.
He's put it just over. Yeah, like we're watching the replays and they're not exactly in the
best. Yes, not in the best. Yeah, absolutely. Righto. 67th minute, a ball out wide to Quintal. That was for. And now look, I will preface this section of it by saying this is when we started seeing some substitutions. So going over those, we had Cicluna and Bertoncello coming on in the 59th minute, and that was for Grozos and Kota. They went off. Then
and apologies, fans. I've watched it again for about the fifth time. It was definitely Natta.
Right. Also, I was right.
Yes, so, you were right.
It's very rare that happens.
Just like with your picks versus me. So the
75th minute, Ben Gibson came on and gave us the Gibson-Rose axis for the next 15 minutes or so when Rose went off. He went off at the 90th minute. So Dobson went off for Gibson, and then Rose went off for Nunez. It was good to see young Alex come on. But we did see the Gibson-Rose axis for 15 minutes or so, but I'm not quite sure when Rose got clattered. I don't think it was too long after that. I think it was in the sort of 82nd, 83rd minute where he come off a bit worse in a challenge, and he was sort of limping for a while and looked a bit out of it. They said it was a head clash when he came off. I remember they threw to Garby saying there was a little bit of concern about Lockie when he came off. He wasn't he'd had a head clash and was struggling. That's why he got subbed. So I don't think, again, we still didn't see the full benefits of those two on the pitch at the same time, although it did look good. I was quite excited by it early on. They were, Lockie was peeling away and Gibson had a goal ruled out fairly as it seemed, but at least he put the chance away, and it sort of provided a preview of what was going to come in a little bit. But so we had those subs before we get into talking about the rest of the goals.
Yeah, and it's something I've been calling for it for I don't know how many months now.
Yeah.
I'm not a coach though, and like I said, once again, looking at my picks, like I don't deserve to be anywhere near coaching staff.
We were calling for this last season, weren't we?
I think so.
Yeah.
Possibly. I think I was calling for a 4-4-2, but
Yeah.
This season I've certainly been calling for Rose just to play wide and just be his normal, annoying, harassing self on as far as the press goes, just to try and coordinate the other front three players. And I thought we really had an opportunity for it, this week with the two sort of injuries that we'd had. But it was good. I think that Rose just sort of maintains a certain level of tempo in that press.
Yeah.
That you can't ignore as much. Even though he hasn't sort of scored for weeks now. It's just he creates things just because of how much of a pest that he is.
Yeah.
And Gibson, with limited opportunities, has still scored 5 goals this season or something.
5.
So,
and even though Lockie hasn't scored for weeks, he's still only one behind the Golden Boot, the current Golden Boot leader. He's got 8. And did the other guy score again on the weekend? Did he?
Yeah, Cosgrove scored against us.
Yeah.
So
he went one ahead. He went one ahead. I'm pretty sure he. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure he went to 9, or actually, maybe am I thinking of the first?
I think
goal?
He was already on 9. I'm looking now. 10.
He's on 10.
10, then Randall, then Eze.
Yep. Okay.
And Jovanovic from Adelaide.
Yep.
Yeah, Rose
and Taylor are both
Rose and
on
Taylor
8.
are back on 8. Right. So equal 5th.
Well, they won't be adding to that at the moment. Right. So getting back to the action. Now the Sydney FC goal that was when Cicluna came on, I thought he had a bit of a ropey start. Some misplaced passes and turnovers, getting caught in the tackle, and it was one of those that ended up leading to Sydney FC's equaliser.
Yeah, it was certainly a period of the game where Sydney had upped the intensity. I didn't notice, necessarily Cicluna playing badly, but yeah, there was definitely sort of a misplaced pass, or he could have potentially have taken another option, before we'd lost possession of the ball, in that lead up.
Yep. Well, I definitely noticed a couple of issues with him before that turnover, and there was at least 2 other occasions after that where I physically heard or saw the cameras pick up Burgess having a go at him on 2 separate occasions after that goal. For different things that he didn't quite do right. He did finish the game pretty well, but there was a period in there where it just wasn't coming off for him. He was getting in the wrong positions. There was some turnovers. He was getting caught trying to pass when it wasn't on, and that sort of stuff was just frustrating Burgess. And Burgess was definitely having a go at him to try and wake him up.
You're playing in a very technical position.
Yep.
Like on the field, where your mistakes are going to be amplified and the good things that you do are going to go unnoticed. And we've said it plenty of times in the past, like when Grozos has an outstanding game, it's when you don't notice him, or when Stevie UG had an awesome game, you didn't notice him because there weren't the mistakes. Like the mistakes right in front of that back four can really sort of come back to haunt you. And I think that there was a bit of a momentum swing. There were certainly changes that Sydney had made, and we're also putting a lot of pressure on a guy that is very, very young, but I still think it's got a lot of sort of quality. And if you sort of go back and compare him to a younger Grossos or a younger Thurgate, he still seems like he's got the goods. So you wouldn't you wouldn't write him off by any stretch.
Oh, absolutely not.
Based
No,
on that one performance.
No, everyone has bad games in their history, including all those players that you mentioned. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that we've got to talk about something, and that's unfortunately what led to the goal. Look, Quintal was definitely catching the eye when he came on in the at halftime. So it had been coming.
He's very tidy.
He's a very
He's
tidy
quick.
player.
He's very tidy.
Very technical, and managed to get on the outside of Aquilina to put the ball into the net. So look, it was just rewards, I think, for the young players' effort. But yeah, frustrating that it happened from our perspective.
And maybe part of it on Natta for being dragged sort of slightly more forward than what he should have been. Aquilina sort of trying to keep that sort of back four compressed. But yeah, good play from Sydney. Let's put it that way. They spread the ball quickly and found the overlap, and it was almost an identical, not quite as far out as what Kota's was, but it was almost an identical goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, 84th minute was here we go. It's the penalty. And thank God for offsides.
I wasn't actually calling for it offside when this sort of went in. I didn't think that that Elianov touched him. I thought that
No.
it was a big flop.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I thought it was. I thought, but the problem was going to be, was there enough of? It was going to be
I know what you're saying,
six of one, half a dozen of the other as to whether that he was going to be able to get to the ball.
I thought it could have been ruled out because of the the flop. But yeah, then when they came back and said, yeah, it didn't even get to that stage that he was offside, I was like,
thank God.
Brilliant.
Yeah, awesome. Like, it was something that no one, obviously everyone's attention was taken by the dive, for, let's call it what it is, from Pat Wood, not Chris Wood, as the discussion was last week. But yeah, I don't know whether it would have been overturned for that, but they were pretty adamant that Delhi was pretty adamant that he hadn't touched him. Although, having said that, it was, Delhi had a couple of ropey moments in this game, that being one of them. There was two opportunities. There was two or three times, I think twice, that he's come out of his box and either headed or kicked the ball away, but it's gone straight to a Sydney FC player, and he could
to Campazano once, and
and someone else.
There was another shot from Stammer that went right across the box and hit the post, or just missed on the outside, and I can't believe he missed that. Like, if he was playing for us a couple of seasons ago, that would have been our own.
Absolutely,
that would have been our only shot on target for the match, and we probably wouldn't have deserved it, but he would have scored it during that Golden Boot season. So it wasn't a comprehensive victory by any means, let's put it that way.
No, absolutely not. And then, we get to the goal that I mentioned before, that Ben Gibson got ruled out for offside. It wasn't by much. Just need to cue it back.
There was another one, I think, that earlier on, might have even been first half. I think it was second, where that didn't show up in the highlights as well, but where Kota sort of ended up having the shot where we're almost sort of 2-on-1 for a while with Dobson having the ball, and I sort of felt like he didn't release it quite quickly enough.
I know the one you mean. Yep.
Yeah, where he's, Kota sort of had to cut back in and then ended up having the shot with his right foot, and it wasn't like convincing at all.
No, I know the one you mean. Yep.
You're almost thinking that sort of circumstance, that if the ball had been released one touch earlier, or maybe put it down to fatigue or inexperience, but maybe if Dobson was right on the very top of his game, that might have been a sort of different outcome. I can't blame Kota for that. I think he sort of made the best of the opportunity that he was given sort of when he received the ball. But it's and once again, I think Dobson's still probably rated a 7 or 8, for the game while he was on the pitch.
We'll go through that. Yep.
Yeah, but there's still improvements that can be made, and there's still the possibility, even without injuries or when these other guys come back, that we might see more changes to the starting lineup, and I can only see that as a benefit sort of over the next 4 weeks and sort of leading into finals, which we are now mathematically assured of.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And look, there was a definite increase in the. It's a bit of an intangible, but it seemed like in the previous game against Auckland, we were trying hard, but none of the final pass decisions were coming off for us, whereas a lot more of them said we seem to be getting a lot more dangerous, creating more danger and chances in this game for ourselves than we did in the Auckland game. A lot of the stuff in the Auckland game didn't come off or was defended a lot better than Sydney FC seemed to defend, whereas in this game a combination of maybe not as good defence or the similar type of defence from Sydney FC and a lot more of our attacking choices and chances being created were a lot more dangerous than they seem to be in compared to the previous week, and a lot more in line with what we'd seen in the over the course of our undefeated run.
Yeah, like even sort of going back to the Western Sydney home game that we had a lot of half opportunities, but we just couldn't quite carve it out. They just weren't quite decisive enough with that sort of final touch. Maybe too many of them believing in the sprinkler blessing.
Yeah. Yeah, notice how that hasn't come off since they publicised it. They've jinxed it. They've jinxed it now. They're gonna have to come up with something else and not let anyone find out about it. Yeah,
guys, you don't talk about Fight Club.
Yep, that's exactly it.
It's another
episode title possibility. Yep.
I thought that's where sort of Gibson and his positivity as far as getting into position to score goals was probably like the breath of fresh air that we needed compared to Rose. Like, Rose once again has definitely got his place in the team, and like we need him. But Gibson sort of making, those runs that are purely to get onto the ball in order to put it away. And unfortunately one of them was like a half step too early, or the ball came half step too late, however you you want to look at it. But like we certainly created opportunities when we had sort of someone at the point of the attack that was purely just looking to try and put the ball in the back of the net.
Righto. 86th minute was the non-penalty offside. Then we get to just before the 88th minute was that goal that Ben, beautiful pass to give it straight to Ben. And I'm just rewinding it. Who was that? I can't pick who that player was that slid the ball through. Cicluna, I think it might have been.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah,
like it looked like it was Cicluna. Yeah, I was bagging him. I didn't say the whole game. I just said for a period during that game when he came on. But yeah, obviously beautiful pass. Unfortunately, Gibson had gone just a fraction too early, and it was ruled out. But it was a good preamble for the next phase of play, which was in the 92nd minute of 6 minutes of injury time. Where the ball broke to Bertoncello, got past the player marking him. Beautiful ball across, and Gibson buries it, and there's the game, 2-1.
Super subs, mate. Like
absolutely.
and the ability to run the game out, which is something that we really struggled with, in the first sort of 6 games of the season, was maintaining that sort of high tempo, but being able to do it for 90 minutes. So, now I guess the confidence is sort of in some of these squad players that they can come in and not just necessarily fill a spot, but excel in a position. And Bertoncello, I'm not going to say he'd been anonymous, like in the sort of lead up to that. He but I don't think he'd had the sort of same impact on the game as what Taylor or Adams would have. But he sort of certainly showed, like why he's in the first team and like what he's got to offer. And that was great little touch, great little turn of pace. He left like Grant for dead, not Ryan Grant, the other one, Alex.
Yep.
Absolutely burnt him for pace and like, pinpoint accurate ball. And once again, it was like, the man of the moment, Ben Gibson, he's just had one ruled out, but he didn't get that run wrong by half a step. He was like, exactly where he needed to be. And it was, clinical finish.
He was right.
And it was, I remember, I'd had a few beers by the end of that game. But it was, it was just desserts, I think. It would have been disappointing to see. It would have been really tragic to see us lose after going up 1-0, and disappointing to for it to finish with a draw. But I thought that we 100% deserved that.
Yeah, absolutely. I obviously was working night shift the weekend, so I actually got up and watched the final 10 minutes. So I saw the last 10 minutes of the game. But yeah, I saw that. But we definitely deserved it. But I mean, going back to what Andy and I were talking about last week, and we were both thinking that Bertoncello would be the one that would come on and start the game. And if he'd have done that, A, he might have been gassed by that point, or B, not even been on the pitch by that point. So if Kota was there, would he have, if he'd have started Bertoncello and Kota was on the bench and Kota had come on for Bertoncello, would Kota have had the pace to be able to beat Alex Grant? Who knows?
The answer is no.
Whataboutism? or if Bertoncello was still on.
Kota might have been 5 meters further out on the touchline and received the ball in a bit more space. So the end result could have been the same, because what kind of guy's got the ball on an absolute string. So it still could have been the same result, but the Bertoncello effort was pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the awesome little offside trap that they played is not in the highlights, but just talk us through it, because it was a awesome piece of coordinated There was a set piece, I believe, and it was pretty much right at the end of injury time.
Maybe 30 out. Where we didn't have to worry about marking posts and the rest of it. And this must have been purely left up to Shaughnessy. I can't think of anyone else in the team that would have had the balls to try and call that play.
Yep.
You saw the back four broke as soon as the run up started for the free kick, and you saw Bertoncello, who almost kept Ryan Grant on side, was dropping as soon as the run up started. I'm not going to say that he was off script. I'm going to say that he got it absolutely perfect as well, because he was running back just to cover it, and he kept Grant offside.
Yep.
But you don't really see that anymore. Like,
we should.
We should when it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it took about us. The linesman could have chosen between 7 players, I'm pretty sure, of Sydney FC's that were offside by the end of that. That little bit of action.
Absolutely, VAR would have ruled on any of them, because they were all affecting the play.
Yeah.
As much as the ball went wide to Grant, and it was tight a bit of control, and unfortunate that we didn't sort of close him down far enough, and Natta trying to make himself as small as possible so that there was no chance that it was going to be a handball call. You don't like to see the ball going in the back of the net, but as soon as I saw the ball played, I'm like, yeah, well, they're offside. Oh, are they going to pull this up? Are they going to pull it? Yeah, they're pulling it up. Like, there was no malfunctions, but another string in the bow, let's put it that way, that next time that there is a free kick, and all the tall timber gets pushed forward, and there's the jostling in the box, I guess the opposition's got to wonder, are they going to break and play the same sort of offside trap as what they did. And obviously if opposition plays it short and we're all running forwards, then all of a sudden we've got the momentum and the press. And if you've got Ben Gibson sort of sitting on the halfway line, or Lockie Rose sitting on the halfway line, then we're probably a good chance of a goal on the counter. So yeah, no, very, very well played. Yeah, I've still got to think though it must have been Shaughnessy or maybe Max Burgess that's called that. But yeah, this far into the season we haven't seen it. It was very, very nice, and it looked very, very comfortable.
Righto, so just to quickly end talking this game with the stats. So possession was 51-49. XG, 1 goal flat to Sydney FC, 2.38 to us. 19 shots Sydney FC to our 11. However, we had 6 shots on target to their 4. Both teams had 21 touches in the opposition box. We created more big chances, 4-1. Passes, 391 with an accuracy of 81% to Sydney, 359 to 78% to us, 15 fouls each. They had 6 offsides, we had 1. We had 5 corners, they had 2. And that's pretty much probably the major stats that we really need to go off. We had 24 tackles to their 20. They had 18 interceptions to our 9, 7 blocks to us to their 1, 27 clearances to us to their 13. So, yeah, really good game overall. Looking at the player ratings, I gave mine before I'd even looked at the FOTMob app and their player ratings. I'd given my man of the match to Burgess. Were you the same?
It's hard to go past him, but if you can pick 2 players instead of 1 for a man of the match, I'd go the back 2, Shaughnessy and Natter.
Righto. Well, I'd hands down put Burgess down before I'd even looked at their ratings, and that was how FOTMob saw it. He had the highest player rating of 8.7. So looking at Delhi was 7.3, Aquilina 7.1, Natter was 7.5, Shaughnessy was 6.7 with the lowest, second lowest rating. Bertolicio was 7.2, Grozos 7.1, Burgess 8.7, like I said. Across the front was pretty high, 7.7 to Dobson, 7.2 to Bayliss, 8.1 to Kota, and 6.4 to Lockie Rose, which I thought was really harsh. He had the lowest rating.
Yeah, definitely. It would be interesting to know the algorithm that they use to just sort of determine those match ratings.
I got no idea.
I think that if you sort of factored in a little bit more heavily the distance travelled and general nuisance factor, Lockie Rose would be a little bit higher. If you factored in 2 for a successful offside trap that didn't result in a goal, then Shaughnessy would be like right top of the pops. Communication, I think, is the big thing that we were lacking early in the season, that we all of a sudden have to have that communication and chemistry, and it's really, really difficult to pick a man of the match based on the individual sort of player ratings. I thought Bayliss was good, given that he'd sort of been pushed further forward when he's been so solid, playing in that sort of slightly more withdrawn, defensive role. But I agree, Burgess was like immense again, and he certainly had a point to prove, against his old club and his old coach.
Absolutely. Just trying to scrolling through these. Scrolling through the A-League match commentary just to see if I can find who their 3-2-1 points went to. I'm not sure if that's a A-League's thing or a Paramount thing, but yeah, I can't find it. So I don't know who they gave the 3-2-1 player ratings to, but I think it might have been Max Burgess. I could be wrong, but I definitely thought, after watching the game back in full overall, he was well and truly top of the pops for that.
If we're going to be contentious and talk about individuals, and I've got no problems doing it, when you see Ocon Engsler getting called up for the Australian squad and Maxi Burgess not, I think it's crazy. Like, honestly, like at this point of the season where Burgess has literally reinvented himself as that deep lying midfielder, defensive presence, and like the ball player, like the fulcrum of the attack, when we've actually got the ball. I think it's crazy that those two haven't been swapped, and if it's purely been based on age, well, I don't think it's going to do Popovich too many sort of favors in the next couple of months. they're the two that I would 100% be swapping. Like I think Max Burgess over the last 3 months or nearly 4 months has certainly shown why he is the best number 6 like in the league at this stage.
Yeah. Well, I think 3 things count against him. One, it's not a position he's played with any regularity in his career, and it's only something that's just recent. 2, his age, like you mentioned, and 3, his dad's not on the coaching staff.
Huh.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it'd be frustrating for Max. I don't think he cares, but it would have been nice for him to have some sort of recognition, especially for 2 games that are being played here against, fairly decent opposition. But he's looking to experiment with a number of players out through injury and unavailable. So surely, I'm pretty sure that was only 4 A-League players that were picked in the squad anyway. So he doesn't
and he
really
deserves it.
Yeah, he hasn't really
100%
taken a chance on
deserves it.
heaps of them. Surely it wouldn't have been that much difference to call him into the squad just to see how he went. It can be an expanded squad and then trim it later. But yeah, it'd be annoying. It's annoying, I think, for other people more than him. I don't think he's really going to make a song and dance about it. He's not that sort of bloke. But yeah, we can be frustrated for him most definitely.
Max, if you're listening to this, like my support is 100% behind you. Like, at this stage, definitely on an A-League level, like you're head and shoulders and mullet ahead of, like anyone else that is playing that number 6 role.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think maybe timing was probably counted against him too, because Popper was at our game against Auckland. If he'd have announced the squad after this Sydney FC game, maybe the result might have been a little different, because you definitely saw who the better player was.
Yeah, and O'Connor Ensler had good moments.
I don't call him that. I just call him Ocon Jr.
Ocon Jr.
The hyphen
had
doesn't
some good
need
moments. But he certainly didn't sort of stand out. Like, I mean, his good moments were more, like distributing the ball to other players that made things happen.
Yeah.
Whereas Burgess was like a key point of our attack, even if it was, stemming from, him winning the ball or getting the ball in our own half. Like his vision, his control, and just the grit, I guess, that he's shown over, like I said, the last sort of 4 months has been awesome. Like, it's been exactly what this team's needed. Like, I was saying, before Christmas that we just didn't have the dog in the team that we needed, and he certainly stepped up and sort of, shown that he can fulfill that role. He might not be physically intimidating, but he's winning those 50-50s, and he's just so tidy technically that it doesn't even necessarily need to be a 50-50. He's got the ball before the opposition even knows it.
Righto. Well, to finish that basically put to finish off talking about this game, that put the Jets further ahead on goal difference, thanks to Auckland losing against Macarthur earlier on in the weekend. So the Jets continue to stay on top, but back to a 4-point lead, 43 points over Auckland in second with 39. Victory in Adelaide on equal points with 35, separated by goal difference. Fifth, Sydney remain in fifth on 33 points. They could have jumped to third if they'd have beaten us, but Macarthur in sixth position, 1 point ahead of Central Coast in seventh. Macarthur on 28. Wellington and Central Coast on 27 points, so not much in that. Melbourne City only a point behind them on 26. Brisbane Roar 24 points, Perth Glory 23, Western Sydney 21. The GVE factor hasn't really seemed to help them get further up the table. And unfortunately, Adam Griffiths' press conferences hadn't really helped his team on the park. They rallied briefly and they're sort of sliding back down the table again. So, some interesting stuff going on. And like we mentioned during talking about the game, before we started recording, we learnt that Tale had been relieved of his duties. And who have they brought in to run the club on an interim basis? Kisnorbo. Until the end of the season. So, swapping one sky blue shirt for another with an overseas club that didn't work out in between is, probably only really has to unstitch the badge and put a new one on, and it's pretty much going to be the same. So, it'll be, at least we don't have to...
he's got the wardrobe for
Yeah.
a Sydney manager anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Just some minor alterations, and at least we don't have to play them again with only 4 games remaining. So thank God we don't have to deal with a new coach bounce.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they'll still have some kind of bounce, but yes, like you mentioned, that we don't have to play them. I think that Melbourne, and going back to 2018, like they're the team that sort of are really sort of standing out at the moment. After the absolute shellacking that we gave them earlier in the season, that was probably a bit of a turning point. And they've got they're certainly coming home with a wet sail. Another couple of wins on the trot, and they've looked quite sort of solid over the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it'll be sort of interesting. Like we played them again in the next couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to sort of see how that game pans out, and it might be a prelude to things that happen later in the season.
Well, like I said, 4 games left of the regular season, so it's all to play for. We play the same number. We play exactly the same teams, just in a different order that Auckland are playing in their final 4 games. We have the week off for the international break, so you won't hear us until after the Macarthur game. That game takes place on Easter Thursday, 7:35 p.m. kickoff down in Campbelltown. So get down there if you can. Make sure you take your earmuffs so you don't have to listen to those goddamn cowbells all game. And the final 3 games after that, home game on the 11th of April against Adelaide, the final away game on the 17th of April against Melbourne Victory, and the final home game of the season, an F3 derby on the 25th of April, 5 p.m. kickoff. That's going to be a banger. Imagine getting a trophy in front of the coast. And knock on wood, hopefully I haven't just jinxed it, but hey, like I said, we can only play one, and that's exactly what Millsy said in the post game of the Sydney FC game. They're only looking towards the next game. They're not looking too far ahead. That's the mentality, drink boats, that they've had all season, and that's what they're going to continue with because it served them so well, and fingers crossed they're going to be able to maintain the momentum in the final 4 games, and we will see how that eventuates. And I'm also pretty sure that because we only have to... There was a stat put up, I think, about the qualification for the ACL Elite, because obviously Auckland, I think we only have to have 2 more wins and then we're locked in for that. Obviously, depending on how Sydney FC played the final 4 games as well, but I think that's still that's another thing to be that they're going to have in the back of their minds as well, not just Premier's Plate, but like we've mentioned, and we keep mentioning, there's some possibility of ACL Elite and an absolute shitload more prize money on offer with regards to qualifying for that competition as opposed to the ACL2. So, yeah, everything to play for. And who knows how long we're going to be able to keep these players employed at our club, because while they're performing so well, there's stories coming out all the time about overseas clubs being interested in all of the players that have performed well this season. So it's going to be it's definitely going to be interesting over the next couple of months to see A, whether we're going to be able to keep all these players, and B, how things shape up with regards to finals as well.
Yeah, and I think realistically we have to accept that we're going to see a few more departures, between now and the beginning of next season. I think that Millsy has done really, really well though.
He's been
just
looked at
to sort of round out, the squad and give, different players game time. And, we've still got other players that I think that we can definitely rely on in those competitions and in the A-League for next season that we haven't even taken the pitch yet. Like, I mean,
No.
we've still got Zach Clough that,
Yep.
he was signed, I wouldn't say as the next best thing, but as a very, very solid sort of anchor point for the team that, still hasn't even been able to break his way into the squad.
Well, I don't know is he even fit yet? That's the concerning thing. We've signed him, hadn't played in a while, supposedly recovering from an injury, but is still being listed as unavailable due to that injury for quite a well, since January. It's giving me Jason Colina vibes at the moment. Have we signed a player that was ever actually going to play for us?
Aquilina was also listed as unavailable for quite a long time, which it's beyond the through the traps sort of we'd heard was fit and was training, etc. But they just chosen to sort of leave his status as unavailable due to injury before he sort of made his way back into the squad. And he had absolutely no problems in running that game out and sort of playing the full 90, and did a really good job for sort of someone that hadn't pulled the shirt on for sort of 6 months. I think it might just be as much the tempo that we play, that's maybe sort of kept Clough out, and
high level of fitness
Millsy
is required.
Yeah, he might just be playing the smart game though as well. Mate, Nunes, another young guy that was in the it was in the squad that only got a couple of minutes. Who's going to benefit more from the experience, I guess? Zach Clough coming on for 10 minutes, or Nunes sort of getting that little sort of cameo right at the end.
Yep, true.
Yeah, so I can't see Clough really sort of featuring until he's 100% ready to play out a full 90. Because he's not sort of someone that you need to bring on in blood. He's already sort of up to speed as far as an experience sort of level goes. So yeah, they're rounding the squad out nicely anyway, no matter what happens for next season.
Right. All right. Well, that's pretty much all we need to talk about. I can't really go over a preview for the Macarthur game because it's too far away. So, like I said, we will take a week off for the international break, and then we'll be back in your ear holes after the Macarthur game the week following. Mate, thanks very much for jumping on, and we've managed to keep it just over an hour, which is not quite the hour and a half, but that's mainly due to the fact that we're not talking about a game next week. So, yeah, thanks for jumping on and joining me.
Yeah, isn't it funny? You plan for 45, it goes to an hour, which is regularly an hour and a half once we get going. And even when we're talking about losses, it doesn't get much better.
Yep, absolutely.
You just hear more doom and gloom. But no, it's been another good week, Furns. Thank you. I missed it last week. I just had too much on. Thanks, Andy, for sort of stepping up again. But yeah, thank you, listeners, for tuning in for another episode of the Furns and Matt Show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Jump onto the website while the international break's on. I will be endeavouring over the next week or two to be doing some more stuff behind the scenes, but fingers crossed, most of the problems have been ironed out. If you are still having issues, please info@newcastlefootball.net. If you want to get in contact with website stuff, if you want to email the podcast, that's podcast@newcastlefootball.net. For all the subscription links and everything, the old episodes, go to newcastlefootball.net/podcast, or go to /forums for the forums. You can jump on. People have been having issues with registering. That was an email problem, which I think has now been fixed. Fingers crossed that is actually the case. So get on there, and it's been increasing in traffic, which has been great to see. But the good place to jump on and talk about not just Jets men's, but Jets women, local league, all that sort of stuff, as well as a bunch of other things as well. So jump on to newcastlefootball.net for all of those available things. So until next time, like I said, week off next week. We will see you the week after. Until then, Vamos El Jerkos.
Come on, the Jets. I'm backing them in the footy picks.
Well, I was just going to see whether you're. I had a horrible week last week. I think someone one of the games saved my bacon. I can't remember.
You might have got 2, and I got 3, and someone else got 4. But three still above average for me. So I'll take it.
Yeah, I think it was. No, it was. Yeah, I picked victory and Jets. Everything else, I just absolutely screwed the pooch on. So yeah, I'll be tipping against the Mariners until now and to the end of the season, but that's probably going to be my undoing. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Right, mate.
Well, as long as you can get that mocker working as good as me picking the Jets earlier in the season was, then I'll be happy either way.